sounds from the rhythm underground. Welcome to the We Love Guitar Nerds podcast, your place for all things guitar. We have your interviews, we have your lessons, your boomer discussions, and your verbal rabble-rousings. So please hit subscribe, share, and like to join our constantly growing musical community. We Love Guitar Nerds. This is Rod Gels. With me today, I have Rusty Banks. Rusty Banks is a guitar player, a composer. He does all kinds of cool stuff in the classical guitar idiom, kind of that kind of family. But it's like he's not like classical guitar when I was growing up, because as I said, me and Rusty were talking a little bit. It was a different world back then. First of all, it's like, but there's so many different options that he is exploring. With the classical guitar, how it's presented, and also composition with the classical guitar, which we don't hear enough of. I need to learn more about this composition and who are the players and all this. So anyway, what we're going to start with is we're going to go back to your beginnings, like your musical beginnings. What are your first memories of music, and then how did that come into the guitar?
Oh, probably my earliest memories was I grew up in very rural North Alabama and went to a very small missionary Baptist church. So probably singing in church was the first music that I was exposed to. Mm-hmm. And that would be important later too. Even after I was playing music, I would, the music that happened there was basically we would open a hymnal, and it would be a shape note hymnal, where you've got like a different shape thing. But we didn't sing those parts. It was just like the pianist would open it and sort of do a stride bass thing at the piano, sort of ragtime sounding, and we would all just sing the melody and make up harmonies for it. Okay. Is generally what would happen at that church. But sometimes I would sneak over to the Pentecostal church where they would jump over pews and stuff to play drums.
Okay.
Go there and play drums at that church.
Okay.
And then sometimes I would sneak over to my friend's Church of Christ church, which didn't believe in any mechanical instruments. Wow. So they had the shape note hymnals, but they actually sang the part. So that's where I practiced reading tenor lines out of a hymnal. So it was a nice, well-rounded music education I was getting just, through these little country churches in Walker County, Alabama.
So in Alabama, this is, I guess, in the late 70s, early 80s?
Yeah, more in the 80s.
So did they know how to, I know shape note singing, was that a thing that everybody knew how to do?
It was sort of a lost art by the time I was in the church. Like, it kind of like blown up in popularity in the 60s and 70s with the kind of like, whole revivalist movement.
Yeah,
that happened. But it was pretty much a lost art form. It was like, against the church that didn't believe in mechanical instruments, they were trying to hold camps and stuff to kind of keep it alive. Yeah. And, if you get into the cities, you're in Birmingham, you got like, this kind of musicological enthusiast. Yeah. That would do it. But no, it was a weird kind of lost language at the church where I went to.
It's horrible.
It was much like I always wonder why the notes look so weird, and actually figured out on my own that like, oh, scale degree 1 is this shape, and scale degree 2 is that. I didn't really know anything about solfege at the time. Yeah. I mean, I knew, like guitar theory, so I knew, but it occurred to like, oh, I see what they're doing here. And then it would be in college before I actually learned about shape note singing and all that.
Did you learn to do it in college?
No. I mean, like by the time I was in college, I was I was already a classical guitarist and playing jazz and already, working on being a composer. So I was already sight singing, but using mostly scale degrees.
Yeah.
But okay, so I was just able to make that connection through the music training I had.
You kind of started with percussion first and singing?
No, not really. Just that singing is what there was. It's what everybody did. It didn't really count as making music, And but no, when I was 10, I was signed up for piano lessons through the school, but the piano teacher never showed up. And so my dad bought me a guitar at the flea market and signed me up for guitar lessons with this woman that was about 120 years old that really wasn't a guitarist, but played piano. Yeah. And just sort of like work you through a method book. So right off the bat, for my first guitar lessons, I was reading music.
Yeah.
But mainly what she would do is write the melody out for hymns. And then put chords above it, and wherever you had a hole, you stick a chord in, like now what we'd call Carter style flat picking, So I did that. After a while of that, I took lessons with a rock guitarist to learn to play some rock tunes. Mm-hmm. Then after that, took some lessons with a bluegrass player to do a little bit more serious bluegrass playing.
Mhm.
And then Segovia died somewhere in there, and I saw a special about Segovia on 2020,
Yeah.
the Hugh Downs. And so after I was like, oh, I want to do that. Um, and by this point, I was already playing shreddy like Van Halen-y, Joe Satriani kind of stuff.
You were doing that?
Yeah, yeah, in like
Okay.
in junior high. Yeah, I was in junior high at this point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
And so that just seemed like, I was always kind of looking for that next level and seeing, classical guitar. I was like, oh, this is it. This is the next level. So we found a guy in town named Marvin McCombs, he's from Birmingham, really killer jazz player. I mean, like just phenomenal jazz player. But like classically trained, and so I took classical and jazz lessons with him.
Mhm.
And then by the time I got to college, I was interested in classical guitar and composition. I had a band in high school that had kind of gone from being sort of a punk band to an alternative band to, by the time I left, we were sort of an instrumental fusion band more than anything else.
Yes.
But like like a lot of things in the '90s, just highly ironic, Zappa-esque
Okay.
kind of things.
So
But
you started out as a punk band because well, that's what you like probably.
we kind of
Energy.
like that. I mean, we like I was a skater punk, and I mean, and I liked a lot of things that were more complicated, but it was hard finding musicians that could do those things. So
Still
I
is.
seemed like a better place to start in the garage. Yeah.
It still is. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And as you learned more, your band morphed into new sounds.
Right. Yeah. The music just kept getting more and more complicated until, it was pretty much just whale songs by the end there.
Okay.
But
Then you went off to college.
yeah. And then, went to college and yeah, really kind of just, abandoned pop music completely. And, like listening I mean, I still go like if a group came to town that I liked, I'd still go see, I was go see live, pop music live or rock music live, but not playing it other than, occasionally I would do pit gigs that would have rock in them, but that was about my only tenuous connection. That and teaching guitar lessons. I started teaching guitar lessons when I was 15. And so even, I kept doing that. And of course, most of the guitar you teach is rock guitar. And so that was kind of nice as a composer because it would keep me, it kept me in touch with American popular music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it was, and that for a long time being Everyman's guitar teacher was how I stayed in touch with popular culture. There was one year though where it just seemed like it stopped. There was like, like one day we were teaching Green Day because that was hip. And
Mhm.
then it just seemed like 8 years later, we're still teaching Green Day. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and then Guitar Hero happened. So that was cool. There's a lot more guitar music, but it was all like stuff that was before my time, even
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
AC/DC and stuff like that. So that stopped. That ceased being a really useful connection for staying in touch with pop music.
Dude, there's a ridiculous amount of people who are really good guitar players that started playing guitar because of Guitar Hero.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's a
it
weird
kind of
thing.
saved rock and roll in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Hopefully,
but
hopefully we'll see.
yeah,
But yeah,
or it kind of did what the Marcelluses did for jazz and stopped its growth.
yeah,
One of the two things. We'll
yeah,
we'll see
yeah,
which one.
yeah. Okay, so you're in college. You're studying composition. You're studying classical guitar. So by the time you're in college, you had like how many different teachers? You had the bluegrass person, the Carter, the
Yeah,
Carter
yeah, yeah. I had to, like,
bluegrass jazz. There's a jazz
yeah,
guy in there.
yeah, jazz guy, and the jazz guy was also my instructor at college. So like he ended up, it was he
Okay.
was with right before going to college, and I went to the University of Montevallo, which is a very like a small liberal arts school in the exact geographic center of Alabama.
Okay.
And kind of kind of the hippie freak school of that. It's where the weirdos go.
Hmm.
So I was there, and he was my instructor there. Um, yeah, and while there, discovered like contemporary classical music, particularly like avant-garde things from like the '60s,
Hmm.
and like hearing
I'm
Penderecki's "Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima" and George Crumb's "Ancient Voices of Children," like really sent me on another
I know.
trajectory.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah,
That is, yeah, my growth in classical guitar. Like, I'm not woke when it comes to that. That's what people are doing now.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's in college you did that. So you went on to get a master's.
yeah. I got a master's in composition from Florida State.
Okay.
Uh, and while I was there, like even though I was there to study composition, I studied classical guitar with Bruce Holzman. It's like a super important pedagogue in the U.S. for classical guitar.
So is he who are your important? Who would you now that you're an educator? Are those the two main guys that you consider to be your main mentors?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like that, definitely. Most of what I do in the classical guitar, technique wise, would be stuff I studied with with Bruce. Um, but and it's very much like, and it's very much in the current vein of like American classical guitar. If you think about like I think his name's Scott Tennant, the guy that was in the guitar,
Pumping
that guy did Pumping Nylon,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, pumping that.
It's very much that sort of
LA
like
Guitar
modern,
Quartet with the
yeah, LA Guitar Quartet,
yeah, they're wonderful.
yeah, really good, yeah. So that's my technical approach is very much that way. My musical approach is a little bit more informed by my composition studies, um, and so like I have a little bit maybe slightly different ideas about phrasing. Actually, ideas about phrasing is closer to other classical musicians, to like pianists and violinists and cellists. But technique wise, yeah, my right hand approach to the guitar and left hand approach to the guitar is very similar in that pump and nylon kind of school.
Okay, alrighty. Okay, so you got you get your master's degree, and then you've been teaching all along.
Yeah, like I said, I've been teaching, at least privately for a long time. Right after, right after, well, actually before I even completed my master's, I moved to Nebraska and got married and had kids and freelanced there for a while. Mainly playing bass for a while because anytime you move to a new town, you can always get gigs playing bass, right?
Yeah.
So like, and I played. The last church I ended up playing for was one of those big mega churches, uh, in Birmingham. We called it Fort God. There was like a few different of these big mega churches. I played at Fort God. Some of my other friends played at Six Flags Over Jesus. But like this is just one of those big, like arena style things.
Hmm.
Playing with a full wind ensemble, like which is weird, like a symphonic band
That's
with
great.
a rhythm section, and
That's great.
like on staff arrangers, and
Yeah.
it was sort of like if you think of like like a gig at Disney or something like that, or
Okay.
it's that sort of thing. Just very big scale, high pressure, team of composers kind of thing going. So it was a good high pressure gig, but I was very experienced at playing playing bass and reading notation or chord symbols or playing by ear on bass. So I did that in Nebraska while there, and like trying to like establish something as a composer. Um, but while there, I picked up my first like adjunct teaching job, teaching some covering a theory class.
Okay.
And after that, after that, then once you teach a college class, then you can teach college then. So like so from there I just go to ping pong around as an adjunct college professor. Still always teaching privately as well.
On the side, yeah. Okay, so when you do adjunct, is that mostly classical guitar?
These days, no. When I started out, yeah, it'd be like most of my adjunct teaching was teaching theory or teaching a survey class, music appreciation, pop music, something like that.
Mhm.
But the applied instruction would be guitar, and it was either people taking not for credit that would be like rock guitar, or if they were taking for credit, they'd be expected to do classical, maybe some jazz. Now I'd say it's the opposite of that. Like the places that hire me now are primarily interested in me teaching commercial music,
I
like
was gonna say.
like
I think that's why you're probably doing well because
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. And that's the thing. It was
those
like for
those
those departments.
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying for those departments to stay alive, they really started moving towards that music business and technology direction, or whatever their name for it is. So I'd say the bulk of my students now at Millersville, yeah, actually, all my guitar students really are rock guitarists, and we're doing kind of like, I guess for lack of a better term, like studying jazz pieces, but mainly some guitar theory and fretboard theory,
Yeah, yeah.
so they can do solos
Using
and
a
write.
jazz approach towards learning the instrument,
Yeah.
even if you don't have to play jazz all the time.
Right, yeah, yeah. The idea is not really to play jazz, but if you play R&B, if you need to sit in with R&B, then you kind of
Yeah,
need to know those chords.
yeah.
If it's got more than three chords in the studio session,
It's jazz.
you're going to need to know how to navigate those. Right. So like, so we're doing that, and and my virtual instrument students, I'll have some that are kind of classical, like they want to do cinematic things or like film scoring, but most of them are doing EDM or hip hop or
Mhm.
something adjacent to that.
Yeah. So okay, so what I was saying is, I think where classical went, it got to the point that maybe this is because of Segovia dying, where it kind of dropped in popularity in the spotlight.
Yeah, it's sort of, well, I don't know. I would say it probably,
Because
rather than
I think
dropping in popularity, I would say his popularity flares up occasionally.
hmm.
Right. It seems like in the 70s, seems like I got
Oh,
to
yeah,
it kind
that's
of
when
late.
I was coming up.
Yeah, like in the 70s, it was huge. Me, like kind of being a kid in the 80s playing it. I guess a lot of shreddy guitarists all claim to have studied some classical,
Ish.
right? So like like Randy
Randy
Rhodes.
Rhodes was my mentor.
Yeah,
That's
right. So like
when I was 12, 14 years old, I wanted to be Randy Rhodes.
yeah, right. So there was some awareness that maybe classical guitar playing was some kind of ticket to some kind of higher level guitar. But like for the most part, yeah, it's sort of like
Rick
I
Emmett.
met a lot of people who were in college in the 70s, and they're all about the classical guitar.
Yeah,
And there's a big drop off, and it seemed to like kind of come back a little bit in the 90s. And I don't know if Segovia dying had as much to do with it as the fact that it's like it just got to where the traditionalist had such a stranglehold on it that it almost killed it.
I agree, and I
Because there
agree
was
about.
only, I mean, it's like there's barely like, I remember, being getting my master's in composition and seeing people who were getting a master's in guitar, and I'm like, okay. And then seeing people getting a doctorate in guitar, and I'm like, there's not even that many guitar pieces.
Yeah,
Like you can play almost all of the guitar literature in your undergrad degree.
yeah,
I mean, or you could in the 90s. If you
yeah,
were getting an undergrad degree in the 90s, it's like by the time you have a master, you really should have kind of played all of the published pieces
yeah.
that are worth playing, other than the millions of exercises we have. There just isn't it's not like violin or piano
Hmm.
where you've got centuries of literature, right?
Yeah,
If a pianist only played music from, let's say, 1850, let's say from like 70, let's say from 1800 to 1890. If they only played music there, they would never get through all of it.
yeah.
And all of it could be like masterpieces, right?
Hmm.
The guitar just isn't like that.
But
Um,
the other part of this, if you want to study the guitar, and this is my personal story, I love classical guitar, but I didn't love it to the point that, like, probably even that you loved it. I didn't. That was not going to be my total thing.
yeah.
And if you
Well, and
study
it
that,
also doesn't make sense for it to be like that's the
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
When you have such a small body of literature,
yeah,
it feels pretty limited, And
yeah.
I think one thing that kept me from being too ensconced that way was being a composer. Like I
Okay.
was more interested in composition, and I love the classical guitar, but that was this thing that could be easily absorbed into my knowledge of music as a composer.
Yes.
But
And
then I was interested in expanding that a little bit for the sake of the guitar as well. But
as a composer, you can bring in all these sounds, classical and otherwise.
right, yeah, yeah, and it would be
Any
expected.
uses for other sounds other than something that may be played like this.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And mainly just the same places we've all been playing. Like that's the thing is, like love playing recuerdos. It's always a hit. Everybody loves hearing me play it. But I know whenever I'm playing it, even if even my best performances of it, there's just like hundreds of kids in the and mid-sized schools in the Midwest also playing it about that good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I don't have a whole lot to say to the world with my interpretation of recuerdos.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your composition stuff. So what are you doing with the composition end of things? In other words, classical guitar and composition. So you talk about all these new era composers on the classical guitar, which the last this is where I'm at, Leo Brouwer. you
It's
know,
good stuff. I mean, that's I was sure
I
glad for
fell
Will
off.
Browder.
I fell off. It's like I don't know the 37. Also, I don't know the 37 subgenres of heavy metal.
Right, yeah.
At some point, you fall off. So,
Right, yeah.
but what are the subgenres of a modern classical guitar composition? Like not
Well,
subgenres, but who are the composers?
yeah. Well, there's like I was always looking for good pieces, and like for a while there, I was concertizing pretty much strictly playing classical guitar, living composers. There would be a few big names in there, like George Crumb, who died not too recently, but this guy taught at UPenn forever, um, and just has some like massive works, not for guitar, but he had like a guitar work or two
Mhm.
that I played. Uh, there was there's all the stuff the LA Guitar Quartet did. That was a pretty exciting time when the guitar quartet took off because it's really intimidating to track down somebody who's like the problem is the people that write for guitar are often guitarists. And they might be really good at that, but that doesn't really make them a composer.
Yeah.
Or they're a good composer, but they're intimidated of writing for the guitar because it's placing those notes. There's all kinds of things you can write that just won't be possible on the guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
The guitar quartet was a nice breakthrough in that, just because it's less intimidating.
Yeah.
If
Really fun
you
too.
have single note things for somebody, they could probably play those on the guitar.
Yeah.
And then if you need more than 4 notes, then you can carefully choose those other ones, right?
Mhm.
So the guitar quartet literature is a great place to look for that. But mainly commissioning friends of mine that were composers as well. Um, Charles Mason, Dorothy Hyman. They both teach at Frost School of Music in Miami now. Monroe Golden, who does like microtonal stuff. Um,
So how
yeah.
do you do the microtonal stuff? Is it a new instrument?
No, this was a quartet that he'd worked out restringing and retuning the guitars, and it was a quartet, and I just recorded all 4 parts. And to perform it live, I would just basically do a music -1, but it was conceived as a guitar quartet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a piece called Vegan Permaculture. It's,
Okay.
was quite an undertaking. But and then also stuff that I've written myself. A lot of times they combine classical guitar and electronics.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so like an early piece of mine that I wrote in college. This was this is when sample editors for computers were kind of a new things, and you were kind of limited to what your 4 meg of RAM would hold.
Yeah.
Right, so very small. So I figured out this way to take samples and create them, and then paste them together in QuickTime movies, and then export that,
Mhm.
like a really convoluted way to do this for kids that couldn't afford whatever the SoundForge or whatever it was back then that we used.
Mhm.
That that Trent Reznor would have been using to make Pretty Hate Machine or whatever. But I started doing some things, and I was what I really liked was making the guitar do things that sounds like weren't possible. So I'd like to sample the guitar and reverse it, and so I'd play a note to make the guitar sound like it was crescendoing, like at the most simple level, or playing a note and having that note fade in and then drop off in pitch, so it sounds like the guitar is detuned. So kind of warping perceptions of what's going on. I mean, whether it's for guitar, or I write a lot of music for other instruments as well. When I use electronics, that's usually what I'm trying to do, is mess up people's concept of the space they're in when they're hearing the piece.
Okay.
That's sort of the gag of it, and
Yeah. Yeah. But
along with the developmental stuff that we do as a composer as well.
also the performance itself is thought out.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the neat thing, because back in we're kind of contemporaries, like age wise. We remember when classical guitar performance always felt like a recital.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's still in a lot of places, in a lot of instances, it is. But
Mhm.
you're trying to challenge. You're kind of challenging that, like that kind of paradigm. And
Oh,
like,
sure, yeah.
we can do
Well,
we.
like I'm doing a concert at the Ware Center in Lancaster on the 19th of January.
Mhm.
That work is a piece I've written for, like, I conceived this a good while back, but it's a piece for classical guitar and surround sound electronics. So I'll play a harmonic, and it bounces around the audience and changes pitches and stuff. So it's a quadraphonic setup that the audience is sitting in the middle of. So it's like an immersive piece for the classical guitar.
That's wonderful.
Or I'll play crescendos behind the audience, and it's all like, none of it's pre-recorded. It's all like live triggered things, using MainStage and Delay Designer and other other plugins. Basically, I'm just designing patches to sort of like you would in something like Max or Notch, but just a little bit more user-end software than that.
Mhm.
And so that was like the piece I'm doing at the Ware Center is called Creatures Some Mythical, and it's about six things that were always kind of perennial, like ever present in my mind as a kid growing up in Alabama. So like fireflies, the hellbender, which is a large salamander,
Okay.
doodlebug, which is what we called antlion larva, um, loup-garou, which is kind of a Cajun werewolf, the ivory-billed woodpecker, which is probably extinct, but a lot of people feel like maybe it's not, and they chase it like you chase, like almost like it's a cryptid.
Yeah.
And the hoop snake, which moves by biting its tail and rolling down hills, and kills its prey by stabbing with a spike in its tail.
Okay.
And like where I grew up, almost everybody knew somebody who had a cousin who knew somebody who had been pursued by one of these, jumped out of the way just in time,
Close
stuck
watch.
into a tree, and then that tree was dead by the end of the day.
Yeah.
So what I like about all of these creatures is that there's something real and something mythical about all of them.
Yeah.
Right? There's something that's kind of like really applies to everyday life
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the lightning bug or firefly, and something that is mystical and magical and can't really be described about the firefly, and
It's
also Gulu Guru.
mythology, a lot of mythology.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So
sort of so it's kind of an Appalachian zodiac of that I wrote a set of pieces about, and a friend of mine who's a just brilliant collage artist. He does these collages using cut pieces of National Geographic magazine, and just basically, kind of cuts them up into like be paper and form and value and gradations and stuff, and then makes these very painterly, amazing collages. So he's made a collage for each of the creatures.
hmm
And then a buddy of mine that does a lot of lighting design, out at Rock Litis, that does like big lighting design for like Foo Fighters and Lady Gaga and all that. He's taken those like high scan images or scans of those images and created animations to project behind me. So there'll be screens with these creatures projected behind me, those collages for real outside in the lobby, and quadraphonic speakers surrounding the audience.
hmm
So instead of me coming out and introducing the piece and playing it and end up taking a bow, it's a little bit more like a show or a little bit more like a ride almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's wonderful. That's what I'm saying. There's a future, like all this new technology, some of which I'm you're better at than you're way better at than I am, because all that, but bringing the classical guitar into that realm, like that's completely cool. So
with the technology thing, there's not really any sense in being good at it. Like, for me, the reason I'm, can do what I can do with technology is because I'll have an idea that's just not possible.
to do otherwise.
It's like, I wish I could play this sound and have it run behind the audience.
hmm
Then you start solving that problem. There's a lot of solutions to that problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a whole series of compositions where we started recording in the front of the room, and then people in the back with boom boxes start boom boxes a second apart. And so the front of house sound has percussive elements that I can be in time with, as well as more nebulous elements. And on the back, those same nebulous elements minus the percussive elements are there. So it sounds like those are echo. So if I have something swell in that front track, then it sounds like it fades to the back of the room and over to the other.
hmm
So back before I had the capabilities to set up a surround sound thing with an interface and tons of cableage and all that, I was achieving the same kind of things, not as precise as I would as I would like to, but achieving them using boom boxes and burned CDs.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever see the Talking Heads stop making sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Where he gets out on stage and he just takes a boombox and he starts the show.
yeah.
That's the boombox and it develops the whole. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll say, like, as a barefoot kid in rural Alabama, like I caught Laurie Anderson had a show for like 2 seconds on PBS called Live from Off Center.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
conceptual video art, most of it terrible, but some of it brilliant.
Yeah.
Like any cutting edge art.
That's the same with everything. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, and that was just like, I just, I mean, actually, I might have even been like 8 or something like that when I saw that. It was just like,
Yeah.
so right. I think I can't help but think that planted the seed for me craving something a little beyond just, coming out and playing a recital.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, what's the future? What's the future in guitar education with you?
Um, I don't know.
What do you
Higher education's going to have to get its shit together. So I'm not super happy with it right now. But
say again?
I said higher education is going to have to get its shit together. So I'm not
Okay.
really happy with it right now. It's
Okay.
yeah, it's like the reasons I went into teaching in college. There's really 3 large reasons. One is that I like teaching. Just like kind of naturally a teacher. Just a little. I've always been a little professorial, right? The second one is that it was this place that would protect my art from the marketplace. Like, so if you have the kind of thing where you don't have a lot of friends on the dance floor, like Penderecki doesn't have a lot of friends on the dance floor, right? It's there's kind of this institutional support for art, for things that are like
Sure.
more the pure science but before we get it applied to the real world. And the third one is it doesn't have an adverse impact on anybody. It's not like working for an oil company or a hedge fund, right? It's
hmm
something that generally helps people. It's a job you can do that's helping people rather than hurting them.
Yeah.
So those 3 things were like what drew me to working in higher ed.
If you're a good teacher.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not that
In other
you can
words,
you can definitely hurt people with it, right? But like,
right,
and
right,
that's the thing is like with those three things really just have kind of slipped away. Like, I mean, I love rock. I love playing rock and in popular genres and still do it, and that's a huge part of my voice as an artist.
yeah,
But most of what I'm teaching is commercial music now. And that's what, so it's not really, and most of what I'm expected to do, like, so there's not a lot of institutional support for me doing weird stuff anymore.
okay,
It's like they're more interested in me, the production work I'm doing, the commercial guitar playing I'm doing, and
yeah,
that's what they want me to teach, which is okay. That's stuff I love and it should be taught.
yeah,
But I'm not, it's instead of that one thing I wanted, which is protecting my art from the marketplace.
yes,
Um, the first, and even liking teaching, I feel like my job is more like customer service rather than teaching these days.
okay,
It's more like, they just really want you to get as many students as you can and keep them as happy as you can and get them through with as little complaining as you can.
okay,
So like, that's okay. I mean, I'm used to working with clients, but that's not really why I went into higher education.
yeah, yeah, I
And
understand.
then that last one, the adverse impact. Well, I'm doing everything I can to keep it from being an adverse impact on the students, but as we know right now, higher education as a whole is kind of just saddling a lot of kids with debt, not really preparing them to do anything.
Yeah,
So I want to, so I'm just here kind of like doing my part whenever so the future in higher education for me to a lot of extent is mitigating those things
hmm,
and trying to reform it,
yeah.
until I get tired of it and
Well,
decide.
you also understand the fact that so much has been reformed in the last 20 years
Yeah,
already.
yeah.
Already, because when I say that, you're part of that reformation already.
Well, yeah, that's the thing
Like
is part like two
you're
of my
hired.
complaints are kind of in opposition to each other, right? Because I'm saying like, well, they're not really preparing these kids to do anything, but also I'm like, but also I have to teach a lot of commercial music. It's like, well, okay, those are
Yeah,
that's
yeah, because you're
so,
part of that reform. And I say this out of respect because I know the people that were in the chairs that you teach in before, and it's like they they probably had the same things as you, but they weren't gonna. They just wanted to be classical all the time, and it's like
well, and,
as
no,
you said, it
honestly,
squeezed the
they could
life out
only,
of it.
yeah, and honestly, a lot of them could only do that. Like, there's a lot of times where
Mhm.
I'll be sitting in a meeting and they'll be like, well, there's classical stuff or there's knowing what a condenser mic is, and I'm just looking at them thinking, oh, I know more about classical music than you do. Like, I'm
Yeah,
no less scholarly than you are,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I know what a condenser mic is. So
You can do both.
what would you say you do here?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's like I don't know. It's all pretty knowable. I think there's been a lot of laziness and people just
It
staying. Or,
always has been.
yeah,
It's like they do just. But I'm saying, as I get older, I see that change does happen,
yeah.
and
So I
that's a
mean,
thing.
there's
That's
a
a
lot of
thing.
ways it can go, and honestly, a lot of my gripes with higher education doesn't necessarily come from the scholarship and the pedagogy. It comes mainly from the funding. There used
Yeah,
to just be a lot more government funding. Well, here's a great example. Like I went to a small state-funded liberal arts school, and in the geographic center of Alabama. Like there's a star on campus that is the geographic center of the state. Um, and when I came, it was not a very big school. I came in, there was a class of 40 music majors, which was kind of a big class for that school that year, music majors. And in our orientation meeting, they said, all right, we expect half of you to be gone by the second semester. And then a year later, that'll be cut in half again. We think anywhere from 8 to 12 of you will graduate with a music degree from here. And 8 of us did out of that class. There's no, like, if a state school tried to do that now, there's no way. And like, there's some things that are bad about that. I think there
yeah,
was, all kinds of gatekeeping and stuff that maybe didn't need to happen or wasn't really that productive.
absolutely.
But there was definitely a level of rigor there that would just be unacceptable now in a
Oh,
school.
yeah, of course. Yeah, I
Uh,
see both. I see both sides of it because I remember going to a institution that you work at and kids coming out of like finals in tears.
right, yeah. Yeah,
And it's like this is like what, late 90s.
yeah, it could be, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, and that was certainly a very normal, a very normal sight. And
yeah,
in my undergrad years.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're not.
it was yeah, unnecessary. There's a lot of places where it's unnecessarily ugly for sure.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, but I'm not really talking about that. I think there's
yeah,
lots of things where we could have been more humane for sure.
of course.
Um, but
But having a little, not opening the gate for to everybody.
well, I really believed in this school's mission, that the one where I went to undergrad, because it was a state school, so everybody gets to try,
Yeah,
right? And if it turns out you're not going to be a good fit for this, they'll help you find
yeah.
help you find that out.
Honesty is good.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Don't spend the rest of your life doing something you're not going to put the work into.
So, I like the fact that, you didn't have to be a rich kid who could afford lessons with the best teachers
Hmm.
since you were 3,
Yes.
just to have a shot at auditioning there, right?
Yeah.
So, so I mean, I know about those kind of, like my son is a upright bass player, studies at Juilliard,
Okay.
right? So he goes to one of those kinds of schools, right? So but I really like the mission of this school is like, nope, everybody gets to try. But obviously we can't, obviously
Everyone's going to
there's
end.
not, yeah.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
many, 40, if we have a class of 40 freshmen, how many of those people are really gonna be working in music? It's like, it's a realistic view of it. So now it's like, get as many students as you can hear. Like when I don't want to accept students who just aren't going to be a good fit, I catch shit about it all the time. If you try to, if you try to shoot someone into another program, they'll be a better fit for them.
Yeah.
It's just, like, that's one thing I tell students here is if you have a professor that gives you a grade that's not an A, they are going out of their way to help you. Because the easiest thing to what we get the least amount of, if we just give everybody an A, we get no pushback on that.
Yeah.
And if we give anything besides that, then we've got to explain ourselves to all kinds of people.
Yeah.
So like if some professor is taking the time to actually assess you, and this is a weird thing for me to say because I'm not really that big into assessment. Like from my applied work, you probably pass or fail, really.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a C in my guitar lessons.
Mm-hmm.
You either showed them you did the stuff or you didn't, kind of like on a gig. You either get hired back or you don't.
Yeah.
Like really like a more professionally modeled assessment would be pass or fail.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is we've just sort of like it's become a little bit more factory like. And that's not to say that it was like great in the 90s. There were some pretty toxic things about universities, particularly music department universities then. And I'm glad to see some of that just barely starting to get cleaned up. I mean, I can't.
It's not even barely. But I'm saying the change from like I started my college in 1987. No, I did not. 1985, 85, 80, maybe 85, 86. Okay, I was still in high
College
school.
years are often blurry.
Yeah, I was still. Yeah. Yes. Old brain, but what the world was like back then was not conducive of okay. You're gonna. There is no budging here.
Yeah.
Okay, the world has changed immensely in the 35 years.
I keep thinking 20 years ago was the 80s.
Right. 35 years, the world has changed immensely because back then your college didn't have a jazz guitar teacher.
Sure. Wow. Yeah.
They would not have entertained a jazz guitar teacher. They would not have entertained. My mentor was taught at your college.
Mm-hmm.
He was great for them because he was like you, a lover of classical guitar, and he wasn't a composer, but he also loved all styles of music.
Right. Yeah.
And they let him do little things with the jazz, but there was no jazz program.
It's weird that for me, the last 2 gigs I auditioned for teaching gigs, they really wanted me to come in and play, and I could tell there were 2 factions in each of these auditions. One that like, by God, we're not letting this guy in here if he can't play classical, and the other faction is like, by God, we're not letting somebody in here that can only play classical.
Yeah.
So a big part of that audition was to demonstrate that I was confident in both of these things.
Yes.
And I'd always do whichever one they wanted first. I would do that, and it'd be kind of okay. And then when I do the other one, there would be like the sense of relief come over everybody. It's like, oh, cool. And then I found out later they'd auditioned other people that couldn't. They brought in people that auditioned and they could do one style and
Yeah.
really cack on
Me,
the other. So
me,
it's
my classical knowledge, I can do some stuff, but when I say some stuff,
but you only got to do a couple of pieces, right? I mean,
yeah,
you probably could do it, right?
yeah.
You could do, you know, if
But
you could,
I'm no authority.
no, but there's not even the expectation you would be an authority on everything,
Yeah,
right? But just like, can you, like, if a kid, you know, can you teach any classical?
yeah,
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's the
yeah.
thing is
And I
like,
do.
and apparently it's a little bit more rare than
What
than
is?
you
Yeah,
and I would think it was these
yeah,
days. But I agree. Like, going back to things that have changed in 30 years, like, um, one thing I've noticed is that, well, I had this. I don't know if you know Chad Kinsey.
yeah.
Yeah, great guitarist, great
Burning
producer.
bus.
Yeah, yeah, right. Wow, yeah.
I'm old.
The well, he said to me one day, he's like, "What is it with kids these days? They never hate anything. Like they never hate it. Like you play something that's terrible, and it's like, yeah, yes, like they might like it or not like it, but they don't, like we cared enough to hate music that was bad."
Yeah.
And I said to him, like, well, you got to keep in mind though, when we were kids, there was 3 channels on the TV,
Hmm.
right? So if something crappy was on TV, 1/3 of television was bad right then,
Hmm.
and it was not asynchronous. So literally 1/3 of all television in the world right then was bad.
Right.
So you had to fight against bad things you had to fight for space for the things that you thought were good.
Yeah.
Kids these days, you don't have to, right? You can have it all. You can have all the bad TV you want, and we just have so much TV. We have more great TV now than we could ever watch.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's way more bad TV, but whatever, it doesn't matter. You don't have to. It's not taking up the bandwidth that one bad show on television did when we were kids.
Hmm.
And that's a big thing. And I think we see the same thing with classical guitar, because I think there was so much snobbery in the classical guitar world because it felt really threatened by
Yeah.
any other kind of guitar. Particularly guitars was just so popular, right? Like I don't know that classical violin ever felt that threatened by fiddle players,
Yeah.
because fiddle playing has always stayed kind of niche. It was
Yeah. It's
about as niche as
completely
classical
different.
playing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Whereas like raw guitar is world dominating,
Right.
right? So that always probably felt pretty threatening to old school classical players. Now, I think we are all pretty comfortable that we can have classical guitar and rock guitar and a million other
Yeah.
guitars.
Mixtures.
And yeah, and none of those guitars are instead of classical guitar.
Hmm. So the thing of it is, there's room for all of it.
Oh yeah,
Probably as an educator, and I'm not going to speak for you, but to have access to lots of different recipes makes you, like, if you're thinking career stuff, it makes you a better player.
yeah,
Unless you're a
yeah.
specialist.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean,
There's
like,
always going to be a specialist that only plays bluegrass.
right, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, especially guitar. Like if you're a just killer bluegrass guitar player, you still better be able to sing and
Yeah.
play other instruments.
Yeah. Yeah. And they
Right.
usually can. They're like
Yeah, and
they,
well,
they usually double.
the ones we see can,
Yeah.
right? Those are the ones working, right?
Yeah.
Well, what I tell my students is you've got to be a jack of all trades and a master of some.
Yeah.
Like you got to be able to do a little bit of anything. You got to be able to, like I'm certainly no jazz artist, but I could sit in the corner and make, like, I wouldn't go to a jazz festival to hear me front a jazz band,
Hmm.
right? But I could sit in the corner and make jazz noise for 2 hours,
Yes.
right? Easily.
Hmm.
And so that's what I'm saying about you have to be able to do all of it convincingly.
Yes.
And then you need 2 or 3 things where you're better than the pedestrian.
Yeah.
Then you might be able to work. That's what it takes right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to
And
be
then,
a
and then
master
also
of
the
trades
mix.
and a Jill of some.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the isolated styles, but then your ability to mix those styles too.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, I mean, even if you're just playing a pit gig, if you just play like the Adams Family the musical,
Hmm.
that book, you're going to be playing flamenco guitar, jazz guitar,
Yeah.
shreddy rock guitar, vaudeville banjo stuff. I mean, like
Yeah.
the idea is just that, like, well, music good enough and you're aware of style enough that you can do these things.
Hmm.
Um, and that's a pretty pedestrian gig, right? Playing in the pit for Adam's Family. Like it's, but often I'll kind of use that if I'm talking to an institution about what should we be teaching guitarists.
Yes.
I'll use like music theater as a really good example of the skill set you need.
I was, yeah, you say that, and you're right. I think studio musicians.
Sure. Well, yeah, but that's
And
the
they're
thing.
kind of the
Like,
same thing.
yeah,
Kind of the same thing, but it's like to be a studio musician, you have
you
to be
stumble in the door and you're like, all right, what do we got? Well, we need something that's kind of like R&B, but more on the Muscle Shoals side than the
right.
Philly side. All right,
Understand the
uh,
history of all that.
I'll take 8 clicks.
Right.
You
Right.
know.
Cornell Dupree, but you also have maybe Green Day power chords.
Right. Yeah.
You also have you have you understand the different recipes and and reading certainly, but reading not entirely. You got to
Yeah.
be
Yeah. You it can't be just reading,
yeah,
but boy, I have seen like well, like rock guitar has become so much more professionalized in the past 30 years, for sure.
yeah.
I can't like it's weird how often I am handed music to read in rock situations now. Like in studio work in particular, like I'm almost always now if I'm hired to do studio work. Well, a lot of times it's classical, but obviously that's notated. But even if it's not classical, um, I have a chart put like at least a lead sheet, but often like specific guitar parts to play, like a mix of all of it.
Yeah.
Like we need you to improvise over these changes. All right, now we need you to do this style over these changes. Now we need you to play this line along with the horns.
Okay.
Like that's yeah, reading went from something that's kind of like an extra skill in your back pocket to something you just got to be able to do now. And I don't mean like sight reading, like often you get the stuff ahead of time.
Yeah.
I always say that I read pretty well for a guitarist, but that's like saying you play chess well for a chimp.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I read better than your average guitarist, maybe, but like
Here's the thing that we need to remind ourselves that just because it's done on the internet makes it everyone seem like everything has to be absolutely perfect. Everything has to be perfect. That world doesn't exist.
no, well, there's
Somewhere in
unlimited.
the world somebody can do it, and he's 8 years old, but that is not what people are expecting. But
Well,
they
the internet has unlimited takes.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I saw this kid playing Joe Pass at 8 years old, and I was like, "Good God!" Just turn my guitar over and make a coffee table out of it. Except
I don't know. I was saying to somebody the other day, like the three most boring things in the world to me are uh, blockchain, 3D printing, and child prodigies. Are just the three things that just
yeah,
I find just more boring than anything else.
okay.
Like,
Yeah, yeah. You don't. The whole child prodigy thing is a thing that if you don't treat him like a kid, he's never gonna grow up like a healthy kid.
yeah, you almost never hear of these
He needs
people
to have a
later.
childhood.
And ultimately, just like the ultimate product is like, I'm supposed to like this because he's good for his, she's good for her age.
Yeah,
Cool. All right. When she has something to say as an artist,
yeah.
check back in with me.
Yeah, yeah. But the other part of this is when they're 10 years old, if you're treating them like a god, that's horrible for their upbringing.
Yeah, I get. I mean, I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about child psychology,
Yeah, no, it
and all that, but just like from
can't be a god at 10.
just
You have to
purely
be
for
a
me,
normal human being.
just purely as an audience member, it doesn't add anything to it to me that they're kind of good for their age.
Yeah, yeah,
It just like, well, the music it's still it's sound and silence organized for aesthetic purposes.
hmm
If they have a great another thing I like to say is that people love a good story and it's a shame. Like it's just like, well, okay, so they came from this background or whatever, and like I don't know, I don't care. It's sound and silence organized for aesthetic purposes. Does it do it for me or not?
yeah,
The fact that they're doing it really well for a 10-year-old, I don't care.
hmm
It's good for them.
yeah,
I hope they're getting what they need in child development, and
yeah,
and I hope they do this as long as it's fulfilling to them, and I hope they stop the minute it isn't,
yeah,
and most of them do.
yeah. Yep, yep. So anyway, thank you, Rusty.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is fun. Nerding out on guitar education. This is there's not too many people I could talk about this stuff to. And I do a lot more enormous amount of respect for what you've done already, because I know, as I said, our circles overlap, and you replaced a lot of the old school, and the forward thinking. You have a bigger idea of what is possible that did not exist when I was 20,
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
22. So thank you so much.
All right. See you out in the wild.
Yep.